Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Passionate Talk. I am your host, Gary Karp, and this is episode number 23. Today is part 2 of my conversation with Tope, and we're going to continue talking about the arts and the arts' impact on society and their contribution to humanity. Tope is going to tell us what brought him to New York, how New York City influenced him, and the lessons that New York City has taught him. We're also going to geek out as only two actors can, so there'll be a little bit of technical acting talk going on. Finally, Tope and I are going to discuss what is spirit. Now, folks, I want to remind you that this conversation was recorded with Tope being on a live set, so there is production noise in the background. There's about 12 children there between the ages of 6 and 12, being kids. So the production value and the sound quality might be a little off, and again, I do apologize. Right now, I want you to sit back, relax, make yourself a cup of coffee, perhaps a cup of tea, and get ready to listen to part 2 of my interview with Tope.
Art is what points direction. When we were studying theater history, all of the machines, the Eclicama, for instance, Deus Ex Machina, that's how the wheel got invented. You know, it was because they wanted to bring Zeus, you know, the player, the person who plays Zeus, they want him to descend from an elevated position down onto the stage. Then they had this machine, and from there things began to happen.
This is fascinating because I have never heard this before. For all that I've studied theater and theater arts and the history, I never heard that the wheel, and really a pulley system is what you're describing.
Exactly.
Was created so
the first time it was used was on stage, and it was in the Dionysiac period, in Dionysiac theater. You know, there's really nothing much that has happened to humanity right now that didn't come from the arts, because we see it first. You know, we're like prophets. We see into the future. We see what will happen through our art. And you know, some people will say, okay, fine, you're open to your muse. You are just channeling a higher force, a higher power. You know, I mean, people have all different types of convictions on that. But for me, it's more about understanding the fact that without that vision, without that, seeing far ahead, there's really nothing much that what you have as a tool can do.
That is, for me, I am passionate about arts, especially arts and education. And if it was up to me, I wouldn't label them as extracurricular activities. I would make them part of the curriculum. And yes. it just drives me crazy when art programs are being shut down, when society looks upon artists and devalues them in the workforce or won't teach them in education, and how everything is being slashed around the art programs, because they do teach us, in addition to giving us an escape for an hour and a half, whether you're going to a museum or a ballet, or even if you're going to watch the latest summer blockbuster, whether it's Wonder Woman or Doctor Strange or the Avengers or Spider-Man or whatever it is, art does play a role in teaching us, in, again, showing us that mirror, showing us really what beauty is.
Yeah. Art is life. What are we without art?
I remember the first time I saw Baryshnikov dance. And I must have been about 11 or 12, and my mother pulled me in from whatever I was doing. She was watching some special on PBS.
Yeah.
And I was mesmerized. I really was. I couldn't understand what was going on, but I couldn't take my eyes away from the screen. It was so beautiful. Yeah. And that opened up an entire world for me.
Yeah, that's the way it is. I mean, art is just so is quintessential. There is really nothing we can become without art, because however you look at it, however you want to spin it, even though we know that we can't do nothing without science, and of course some people would even prove to you that art is science or science is art. You know, either way. But the fact is, those people who are at the edge of that experience, those who are making it come alive for us to enjoy or to escape into or to dream, they are a very important part of society. I mean,
That,
look at us in Africa. When I got here, I never really understood my 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 purpose as much as I understood it fully when I got to the States, to New York. I've been to New York once or twice before I came this last time, but when I saw all of what is happening in New York, I realized that my goodness, this is what we need to do with the whole of Africa. It's a change of mindset, a reorientation.
can you tell us a little bit about those first experiences and how it opened up your mind, and what specifically was the impetus for you to say, yes, I want to bring this back to my country, I want to bring this back to the African continent, and I want to really teach through art and inspire through art? What was it about the first trips to New York that made you say, yes, this is my purpose?
Yeah, the first thing was actually before I came to New York finally. As a teenager, I saw this series called I'll Take Manhattan, but it was an American soap series. It was a mini series, and that really it was about a magazine, a rich man who he wasn't rich when he started the magazine business, but he became very successful and he built a dynasty based on that. And I've always been fascinated about about Manhattan. So when I finally got here and I got a bit settled down here, I realized that the this is a place where um, it's called the um, home of the brave, land of the free. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, it's backwards, but you got it right. It's Land of the Free, Home of the Brave. But we get the picture. You'll be forgiven.
So it's you have a lot of people who are in New York and they are driven. They're passionate about what they're doing. They want to make it happen. And you see all these huge dreams. And you imagine all of these huge structures you see. They were somebody else. They were somebody's dreams at some point. And look at how it's been manifested. How it's been brought to, concrete, tangible evidences that you can see, towering high above your head. So I realized that, well, you have to be strong. You have to be sure of what and who you are, and you have to be resilient. One of the things that also touched me was how Americans have been able to document history through their arts. When you go to any city, when you get anywhere, you see all these sculptures, you see all these monuments that talk about the past, you know,
Hmm.
the dream of the future. Even if you walk the street, if you go to DC, for instance, you see all these sculptures everywhere, And I said, my goodness, this is keeping their history alive. So the American history is so alive, even if you walk the street. You know, we don't so much have things like that in Africa. We wipe out history almost all the time, and there's no way to preserve most of these things. And more importantly, the thinking, the orientation. We need to do something about it. And I figure, well, one way in is the arts. And that's
Hmm.
one thing that New York has really, really shown me. I've seen how they've used the arts to bring about changes. I've read a lot of histories about movements. That's pretty much what it has done. Because when you're in a city like this that is very dynamic, you have a lot of energies, different types of interplay of energies, of emotions, of interactions. You realize that, well, it kind of toughens you. It toughens you and makes you understand that you cannot just give up. You have to just keep pushing forward. Because you hear stories of people who were down and out this moment, this year, next year, they're running this multi-million dollar company or something has happened.
Well,
Look at the
okay,
story of Uber,
let's
you know?
let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
You've come to New York. You understand the resilience and the tenacity it
Yeah.
takes to survive and thrive in New York.
Yeah.
So, what were some of your challenges? What were some of your failures? And I put those in quotes because I don't believe in a failure that inspired you or made you dig deep and say, no, I'm going to overcome this to the point where you are now the head of an organization that we'll talk about in a little bit, and you're putting together a program to inspire and empower children back in your home of Nigeria and also in the States by giving them art. What was one of those challenges that really tested you that you walked through the fire and survived?
Yeah, it's making my film, making a production, making it happen. Because when I came, the singular reason I came in here um, was to find stories within the African diaspora that would do well on TV in Africa. That was what brought me here, because my wife and I have been able to make a success of our career, of our profession back home. We have a company. We've done a couple of things, and we said, okay, what's the next big thing that will happen to Africa? We know that the African diaspora is growing at an alarming rate. A lot of people are moving out of Africa, and their purchasing power is getting heavier. They are dictating how, well, maybe not purchasing power, but like they're dictating the trend in Africa. You see most of the progressive things that are happening. You see that you find somebody who studied abroad who came back to Africa or something, and we just figure that it's time to begin to tell the stories truthfully about what is happening abroad to Africans at home. And we belong to the method school of thought. Uh, we of course I mean, that's Stanislavski, Jesse Grotowski, all those people.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about the
So
acting
you
method,
got it.
not so, okay. You said method school of thought, and I was like, I was about to ask you to explain that, and then you went Stanislavski, and I went, oh, okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know that also dovetails into directing as well. So
Just
you have to,
for our
yeah,
listeners who are not familiar, Konstantin Stanislavski was a Russian actor and director in the 19th century, I believe.
yeah, 19th century.
And he came upon a style of acting and character development and directing where every decision the actor made came very organically from their own personal experiences,
Experiences. Yeah.
using a lot of psychology and behavioral modification in order to get the actor not to act, but to actually be in the
Become.
moment and
Hmm.
portray the character. That
Absolutely.
later became known as the method.
Yeah. For me, that's what brings it all together. If you remember, is it Polus, the first the Greek actor, when he had all these performances and he lost his son and he had to cry. So he has the cremated vase of his son hidden behind the prop, and every time he comes on stage and he sees his son's ashes, he just bursts into tears. That's the method right there. I believe strongly that if you cannot feel it, if it's not authentic, if it's not coming from a place of, I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to have seen everything else, but because human emotions, human experiences are often similar, there are things we can take from our experiences that can become very useful when we're working as actors and as creatives generally. So I mean, for us, it will be inauthentic, it will be unreal for me to talk about life in America without living in America. But even then, if we even look at it, even if you don't believe in the method, at least you prepare for your role. You do some research,
Yes.
before you can authentically play the role or become that role or, fit into that character. So we decided with my wife that we have to come out here and see what life really is in America before we can actually produce projects that will be authentic to the American experience, at least from the point of view of an African. And that's what brought me here. So, in a way, I thought that it was going to be easy, that I had all this huge community of Nigerians, of Africans who just going to embrace what I want to do and blah, blah, and all that. But I came and the reality is totally different. Of course, there are a lot of people too who are seeking to succeed. at the type of thing I'm trying to do. Maybe not many who wanted to produce projects for TV in Africa, but at least people who were in the production business, who were in television and film, and who were also into acting and directing and writing and all that. So when things became tough for me, one way I was able to overcome or go through those difficult times was that I was taking them now as the experiences I need to be able to write about people who are caught in those type of situations.
Okay, so I just want to touch on that because that's
Yeah.
very interesting what you said. I've done at this point I think I've done maybe 2 dozen of these interviews for Passionate Talk, and I tend to ask the same kind of questions because the same kind of stories come up. And everybody, when they say that how did they overcome their challenges, I always get very practical advice of, well, I did this, or I went to school, or I just believed in myself, or I found a mentor, or I found a coach.
No,
The
that's not
way
my story.
you seem to have worked around those challenges is in a very empathetic way. You found people who were interesting to you or whose stories you wanted to tell, and you stepped into their shoes and got a little bit of relativity, and
Yes.
that made you, if I could assume, and I know you're never supposed to assume, but I'm going to do it anyway, that gave you a different perspective because you saw how much better your life was compared to the stories you were trying to tell. You actually used
Absolutely.
empathy to get you through that. That's
Yes.
fascinating. I've never
Yes.
heard of that before.
That's actually what that's how I coped with most of the challenges that I faced, and how I was able to really feel the stories that I wanted to tell. So as I'm talking to you now, I have 100 stories that I've I would say farmed, like I've thought through. I've developed many of them, but more importantly, I'm like ready to go now, because it's like my 6th year in the city, back and forth, and I've I've seen almost the entire spectrum of how tough it is for an immigrant to live in the States. Both an immigrant who has his papers right, who is doing everything right, and the one who doesn't. There was a time I got so I got so broke. I didn't know what to do with my life. And I had, I've taught my kids in university right now back home, so things became so tough. I couldn't send money to them. I was thinking of what to do, and I went on Craigslist. I was looking for odd jobs in New York City, and I saw, oh my goodness, and it even slid into even darker things, like people selling their body parts. Like some people will sell part of their organs, just to survive. Some people will sell their sperm. Some people, and sometimes when I look at the broad spectrum of my experience, all of what I've seen here, I just I just become more fascinated about us as human beings, humanity generally. I've seen people. What New York, part of what New York has taught me is respect, absolute admiration for the human spirit. Because I've seen how people go from. I've seen how situations and conditions can press people into situations they don't want to be in, but because they still believe and they're still forging ahead, they're looking for ways. For me as an African, for me as a Nigerian, that is huge. That's resilience right there. That's tenacity. That's like believing that, you know what, if I can just survive another day,
Well, let's talk a little bit
I'm gonna get
about spirit because you just opened up the door and belief and faith. What do you believe spirit is? Does it have to be a belief in God or a higher consciousness, or can it be in something else? When somebody says spirit, or you say it showed New York showed you the strength and the power of spirit,
there. Yeah.
what exactly are you talking about at that moment?
Okay.
What do you
Okay.
mean?
The way my father was was a very interesting man, and he really had he taught me a lot of things. He made like every human being, we make a couple of mistakes in our lives, but at the end of the day, if you are authentic, if you are truthful, you are not afraid to say yes. You are not afraid to learn. You are constantly learning. So part of the things he taught me was that every human being is himself a god. And when you look at I'm a Christian, right? So when you look at my faith, what most people don't seem to understand is that it's we are actually gods by ourselves, because we have the spirit, we have what it takes to make things happen. But you see, that consciousness now is what most people don't really understand.
I think we've
You
become
know,
very detached from it, from the way
Th-
society is right now.
thank you. And even those who claim to be Christian or those who claim to be religious, they don't even understand that fact that God has actually made them gods.
Yep.
So there's a lot of confusion. So
Tope, you
when
and me
I
right
talk,
now, we're simpatico. We're right on the same page with this guy.
you know so when I talk about spiritual things, religious things, and all that, I always tell people, you cannot. I mean, if Jesus said everything that you have here has been given to you from above, then you should understand that there are certain things that we are supposed to live, right? We're supposed to go through life. Ours is to do our best, work our butts off if we have to, and just have faith that, you know what, it's going to get better.
I just want to make a parallel because we're talking about spirit and spirituality, and you mentioned Christianity and Jesus saying, and I forget the exact verse, so I'm not going to quote it exactly, that everything that you've been given has come from above, and that is very similar to the Wiccan or the pagan belief in as above, so below, which essentially means, hey, if it's that way in the greater universe, it's that way down here. That all the power that you have, that you are saying you're getting from the universe, or that you're getting from God, or you're getting from Jesus, or you're getting from Shiva, or you're getting from Gaia, or any of the other multiple gods that are out there, if you believe in the gods, is also within you already. And even if you're atheist or agnostic and you don't believe in a God per se or a higher consciousness to the universe, you still have all that ability, all that science for the tool and the artistic creative ability for the vision to make it happen.
You do. You do. Absolutely. In fact, my own culture, the Yoruba culture, the Yoruba mythology, we believe, the Yoruba religion believes that when you live in the heavenlies, when you're coming into the world, you already made a decision what your life will be like.
Oh, I agree with that
That
100%.
you, that we that you actually say this is where you're going and this kind of life you're going to live, and that's it. Because we
Oh,
don't believe, they believe in the Yoruba religion is that the world of the living and the dead, they're actually the same. They just transition.
there really isn't a life and death kind of thing where one is one thing and the other is other. We're all energies, we're all
Yeah,
soul, if you want. And
absolutely.
it's just a continuum. It really is. We move from one experience and we transition to the next. And then we transition to the one after that, whatever that's going to be. So I absolutely agree with you on that, especially that you create the your life before you come down here, that even to the point where you agree, you make a conscious decision with the individuation of the giant souls, because I do believe there's a giant soul that we're all part of and attached to, and it just separates and individuates as we come down to live our lives on earth.
Yeah.
Before we make that decision, we actually decide who we want to go through this life
Yes.
with. So
Yes. Yes.
before we even became the individuation known as Gary and Tope, we made a decision up in the universe, up in the energy, up in the collective soul,
Yes.
that you and I were going to meet at a specific time and we were going to go through experiences and challenges and overcome them and help each other and manage with each other to get through these things.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. I really do.
There's a whole lot of things about life that is just as very very amazing. We look at it and we think it's just we don't know that there are several other layers. I try as much as possible. Some time ago I did a research. I was doing something about Christianity in Africa. I was doing a documentary, and I did a research, and it took me to actually just study just what Jesus said, not how it was interpreted, but the very words he said. I realized that there's a whole lot that are hidden in those words that religion has, in a way, shielded from us. And I think they're just profound truths, you know?
I, I think that the best way, and really the only way to end this conversation right now, Tope,
Yeah.
is with one of my favorite quotes by William Shakespeare from
Mm.
Hamlet, which simply says, "There are more things in heaven and earth than are known of in your reality, Horatio."
Oh, yes. That's absolutely true. And one thing that I also found out, I think if we can be quiet, if we can be still, if we can look inwards, we have a lot of answers within us. We carry a lot of answers.
That is why I am a firm believer, whether you want to call it prayer or whether you want to call it meditation or whether you just want to call it quiet time,
Right time.
we should each take sometime during the day, set aside 5 minutes,
True.
10 minutes, a half hour, an
True.
hour if you can do it, to just sit and be alone with your
Yes.
thoughts
With your thoughts. We
and
really
with
should.
yourself.
We really should.
Now, Tope, I do want to take the moment to thank you for taking time away from the kids and the production that you're in,
Yeah.
for having this talk with me. It's been a blast. It's always a wonderful thing talking with you. And right now, I want to give you the opportunity to just talk about anything that you're passionate about, any projects that you have going on, and let the
Yeah.
people know how they may be able to support you and where they can find you if they just want to reach out to you.
The major project I'm working on right now is for kids called Charles Park Initiative, and we started the journey about 2 years ago. The goal, our major objective, is really at some point to bring kids together, kids from all over the world, to sing together once every 2 years with a celebrity artist. And the ultimate goal of that is to be able to raise funds for nonprofits that are working with children around the world, not just in Africa, but around the world. The What inspired it is what I've seen, how children have not been given enough room to be creative, especially in the third world countries. Because you have when you have a condition where there's a lot of poverty, it's difficult to really allow those kids to be exposed to what they need to be exposed to, so they can actually open up their minds and their hearts at earlier on and become everything that they are created to be. So what we intend to do is to make sure that we do that regularly and raise a pool of funds that nonprofits can access. That's nonprofits who are working for children, who are working with children. And the whole process is to actually go on television. So what I found out, when I started my career in a nonprofit, that was in 1993, and I was always very sad when every time we start a project that is so wonderful, we get cut off once funding dries up. And the question I've always had in my mind at that time was, why is it that people always have to give us money to run these wonderful projects, and when sponsor fatigue comes in, everything dies, everything collapses? That's okay, fine. Can I find a way to use what I do as a producer to create a platform that can be sustainable over time? I said, okay, fine. The best way we could do that is now to look at how we can create like a choir or some kind of production for children, and then use advertising and television to push it so that we can have a steady stream of income that we can now put back into helping projects that we can actually sustain consistently over time. So that's the whole essence of Charles Park. So I'm really, really looking forward to people who will be able to help one way or another, especially through funding or through volunteerism or anything they can do just to help us make it happen. And our website is www.charlesparkinitiative.org. Right now, this year, what we're planning to we're gonna start our film festival very soon. The goal is to encourage young filmmakers. We're not looking for anybody more than like 23. We're looking at kids who are, teenagers, most especially, who can make some short films about children, but we want it to be fictional. What I love about fiction is that it helps you to think, to dream, and that's what we want for those kids. So we want to have that, and then have our own film festival, have a platform where people can submit stories, and ultimately create a platform, especially in Africa, where we can have most of our children's stories told to the world, much like what you have with Walt Disney and all those type platforms.
And just for full disclosure, folks, I am a member of the Child Spark Initiative. I met Tope about 2 years ago because of the Child Spark Initiative, and he asked me to come on board and adapt my vision board book, Clear Visions, into a workshop to help these kids gain a better vision for what they want to do and create their own lives and empower them to do it. So in full disclosure, I am working with Tope to make this vision come true. And I'm doing it not for money, but because I truly believe in his vision and his passion to help the kids. That's what this man is all about. And that website again is www.childsparkinitiative, spelt like it sounds, and I will put it up on the show notes so you can just click the link, go there, read up about the organization, www.childsparkinitiative.org. That's childsparkinitiative.org. And donate to the cause, whether it's $5 or $10 or $20, or even if it's $1. Every little bit helps. It goes to help these children realize their dreams and to expose them to art and their creative abilities, and I think that's so great. Tope, again, I want to thank you for coming off the set and taking some time to have this conversation with me, and we will talk later, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a great honor.
Tope is a very passionate person, as you can tell. He dropped some great truth nuggets on us again. I love the fact that he said every human being is himself a god. And the fact that he learned to use empathy to overcome challenges. Those are some wonderful lessons to learn. We are gods to ourselves. If we believe in a God and we believe that God is omniscient and omnipresent in the macrocosm we call the universe, then we must also be omnipotent and omnipresent in the microcosm we call ourselves, our lives. We could achieve anything. We just need to use, as Tope told us in the first part of our conversation, the tool of science with the vision of art. I love that Tope got so into the immigrant experience in New York City and that he wanted to bring those stories back to his home in Africa, and that he learned about the challenges and the struggles of those immigrants. And for me, of course, it was a lot of fun exploring Stanislavski and talking about the method. I hope it didn't bore you too much. I geek out on that all the time, being an old actor. Well, that's all the time we have right now for this episode of Passionate Talk. Until next week, follow your dreams and passions and manifest the life that you choose.